Well, you know, Josh, we've had a lot of success and growth on our YouTube channel due to us finally watching the Star Trek movies.
Yeah, those reactions have been great for us for sure. So naturally, I think we should just start a new, totally unrelated series that nobody asked for. So in this series, we're going to be talking about whatever movie we want, and we're going to alternate between movies we want to watch, whether they're our favorites or ones we just never gotten around to, and also ones that our patrons decided for us to watch. And today is one of those movies that our patrons decided for us with Apollo 13.
Yes, and I'm so glad they did because this is one of those movies where I wish I saw it years earlier because it's fantastic. I love this movie.
This could be the worst disaster NASA's ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
It's funny if you watch the full uncut on Patreon, well, full uncut, which probably won't. There's a moment where I think we paused, like to use the restroom. It was only like 49 minutes in. I think we both audibly went, "Oh!"
Yeah. I'm gonna pause it there. Holy
Oh my
shit.
God. I thought, yeah, we're like an hour 10, an hour 20.
Yeah, that first act, it was sluggish. As they get to their journey, it's the slowest act of the movie. Still, I was really invested, but I thought we were for sure longer ahead than we were. Realizing there was still an hour and a half left, it was like, oh my God. But then that hour and a half, I felt like flew by.
Yeah, and the thing is, they were like already in space past that 49 minutes. Because I thought that first act, maybe even leading into the middle of the second, I thought it was all going to be, not like training montage, but, maybe a little bit of training montage where they're running all these tests and all this stuff, and it's like they're not figuring it out. Then all of a sudden, maybe around 30, 35 minutes, we get we're 2 days away. Like, oh shit. And the one dude's sick. It's like, oh, that's where they're going with this. And they pull in the reserve guy, the womanizer, Kevin Bacon. It's like, oh, where every scene he's in, he's talking to some lady, which I find hilarious. Like his first introduction, he's teaching like a woman how to do like the LEM entry.
When you feel that thing slide in, everything's clicking. It's like no other feeling in the world.
Oh, that's great. And that's the guy that they got to pull in to save the day. Movie's great. Movie's great.
Yeah, I think we should start there with the cast and crew because I think it's one of the strongest parts of the movie. Directed by Ron Howard, and every time I do come upon one of his movies that he's directed, I've never disliked it. There's ones I like more than others or I'm indifferent about, but he's just such a quality director that he's like one of those guys that maybe he's not everyone's favorite director, but he's on everyone's like top 20.
I feel like he's that guy you bring in when you need like a solid job done. Like, who's available that can, give us not garbage and not, average. Oh, Ron Howard. But you got to book his brother. Okay, fine. Bring him in. And speaking of cast, he actually used his brother and not in like a jokingly cameo or something. Like, he was like a pretty integral part to a few scenes.
Gene, the Odyssey is dying. From my chair here, this is the last option.
The entire cast, so the movie stars Tom Hanks as Jim Lovell. This movie is based on a book, obviously real-life events, but it's adapted from a book, Lost Moon, that was actually written by Jim Lovell. Kevin Bacon, as you said, as Jack Swigart. Bill Paxton as Fred Hayes. Ed Harris as Gene Kranz. Kathleen Quinlan as Marilyn Lovell. Gary Sinise as Ken Mattingly. All real-life people, and from all of the research I've done on this movie, it does not seem like there was really much of any Hollywood dramatization. Even a lot of the screenplay is directly adapted from the communications that are publicly available record that you can go and read about the actual event, the transmissions.
Yeah, what a like star-studded cast. Like, everyone perfectly portrayed who they were supposed to be. Like Tom Hanks, one of my favorite actors of all time, just perfectly playing that leader captain, and then Ed Harris, who's like a different form of a captain. It almost like I want to see Ed Harris as like a Star Trek captain, because one thing like I love how he's like the man in control. Because to be in the situation, life or death situation, where you're like talking this like blind, flying piece of not garbage, but hunk of metal through space, it's like you can't have time to freak out. You can't.
Anyone's going to be affected by that situation, but if there's anyone that can try to stay calm, it's probably astronauts, because they have to go through so much just to qualify to go on these missions, rightfully so. Plus, so many Hollywood movies take so many liberties of, there are ones that are based on a true story and like it's barely even what happened. I mean, I was surprised that there wasn't, scenes of Tom Hanks, out in space, flying around, grabbing him on the last rung of the ship.
Well, there was, but it was a dream. Got to talk about that scene too, because it's one of the best dream wake-up scenes, where it's just someone's eyeball, and it's like not even their eyeball; it's like the wife's eyeball.
Kathleen Quinlan, who played Marilyn Lavelle, excellent in that role of the wife, and I feel like it could be such a trope character of like, oh, a wife concerned about her husband on this journey, but she plays it so well, and it also leads into one of my favorite things about the movie, the makeup, the subtle makeup throughout, where her character as the movie goes on just looks more and more worn down, tired, stressed out. That's such a hard look to pull off. Something so subtle. Not only her, they do it for every character in the movie as it goes on. You have to, in order to make you believe that time is lapsing, these characters can't really sleep, or the ones that can, like the wife, doesn't want to sleep, probably doesn't want to eat, They do a great job portraying that without there ever being a on-the-nose scene of like, you need to get some rest, you know what I mean? Like, it's just there on screen and you can see it.
And I heard Gary Sinise, when he was asked about the film, like which role he would like, he picked the role that he took because he's a guy that saves the day. It's like, I'll take that role. It's funny because he worked with like Tom Hanks the year before in Forrest Gump. What a switch. That's cool. They feel like completely different people.
Yeah.
Like Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump to these two characters. It's like, that's got to be so weird.
I'm very curious how it was for the characters who, like Ed Harris's character and that crew of all of the people at NASA, and then opposed to like Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton. Like most of the movie, these characters aren't on screen together, and they're kind of like, filming wise, I almost wonder if it felt like they were filming two separate movies. You know what I mean? Like you hear about so much today with CGI and everything of like, oh, I was never even in the same room with this person, and they're like in the same scene together. But like this being back in the 90s, I wonder if, especially like Bill Paxton, Tom Hanks, and Kevin Bacon felt like they were just in a movie by themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not a lot of room to work with, especially if they were filming in that airplane or whatever. So it's probably a very tight, close set.
I also loved a lot of the cinematography in the film. One of the best shots that sticks out to me is at the beginning of the movie, Tom Hanks on Earth using his thumb to cover up the moon, and then when he's on the moon, doing the same thing to Earth.
Yeah, and that's also a great scene from him because he just wants to get to the moon so bad. And at the end, where like the two, Kevin and Bill are like filming, like taking pictures or whatever, and like, oh, look at that, I'd love to sit down right there. And like he has that moment, like, guys, what are your intentions? I'd like to go home. So he's like, okay. He understands. He's right there. It's everything he's ever wanted is right there. But he's like, nope, I'm going home with my family. And he never went back out in space after that, apparently.
Yeah, and I was very shocked by that. I mean, I get it on one hand.
After that, yeah. But you were right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
I mean, and his wife probably wouldn't let him go back, even if he wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's funny how that works on two levels of, it's so relatable to the everyday person of like having a goal or something you want to do and like being so close to it. But then also his specific goal is something only a handful of people in history are ever going to be that close to or be able to do. I mean, so...
And to be right there and have something like that happen.
I knew nothing about this. I hadn't even heard that this happened. When we watched the movie in the Uncut Reaction, I talk about like, did this really happen? And I look it up as we're watching because like I had a feeling it did, but I just, I don't know, blame it on American education. I don't know, but I never
The only other Apollo movie I knew was Apollo 18, and I'm pretty sure that one didn't happen.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
So the movie opens with them watching the moon landing.
When was the last time like people got together for like an event to watch on TV like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, outside of just like yearly stuff like New Year's Eve or Super Bowl or something,
Yeah,
like
well,
a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever experienced one. I would guess maybe, I mean, it would still be New Year's Eve, but you could say 9/11. It would still be New Year's Eve, but I guess like probably Y2K was a big deal, would be my guess. But beyond that, I mean, the finale of the first American Idol.
Yeah. When they're watching like the actual moon landing with one small step for man, like Tom Hanks' face is like so like, just look on his face where like, that's going to be me, or like, that's got to be me next, like perfectly acted. And after that, when he's doing the thumb thing, he has a great line that adds to the realism. He's like,
Christopher Columbus and Charles Lindbergh and Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong.
like says it like that because he probably knows him,
Yeah.
and it's in that time period. So you say Neil Armstrong now, it's like, oh, legend. But to him in that scene, in that time, where it's probably his buddy who's not even famous yet,
Yeah.
just the way he delivered that line and made it like so real. It's like, and Neil Armstrong, can you believe it? Like the guy that you know what I mean?
Like to him, it's just a guy.
Yeah.
A guy he knows from work.
Yeah, who just did like one of the biggest things ever, and he like can't believe it. It's that guy.
The movie is a human story first. Because dealing with the subject matter of them needing to get back to Earth, the movie needs you to care about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And it does a great job setting it up with that house party, introducing all the characters, and then that scene that Tom Hanks has outside with his wife. It just sets in stone, like, this is going to be a human first movie. And it does that throughout the entire thing. In that first act leading up to the trip, all the scenes with Tom Hanks and his wife are all excellent scenes. I love the one in particular where she says she's not going to go see the launch, and then she shows up.
Well, hey, that looks like Marilyn Lovell, but it can't be. She's not coming to the launch.
I heard it was going to be a hell of a show.
But they have to be across the street from each other. That's just something different, because of the situation they were in. That probably was, like, really the situation.
Yeah. Also, Bill Paxton with his kids there, adding that tension. Like, oh man, he's got his kids, his wife. Can't embrace any of them. Tom Hanks is like giving like a tour, and like one of the reporters asks, like, why even go to the moon again? Like, so and so was already there, and he says,
Imagine if Christopher Columbus had come back from the New World and no one returned in his footsteps.
I'm like, oh god, this movie has like that great like, let's go, indomitable human spirit, let's go.
We weren't alive, so I can't speak to this personally, but I feel like back then when there was less technology, less knowledge, just all around, there was more curiosity, which led to like less individualism and more of like a common goal. Like, we don't really have a common goal anymore, and I think it's part of it is because, like, what is there to have a common goal about? It's like we went to the moon, you know what I mean? We did everything here on Earth. We went to the moon. Like, no one really cares about going to Mars or anything. So it's like back then, them all watching the moon landing like that. It's like everyone in America, and to an extent probably around the world, were like captured by that and this like human goal.
Yeah, plus like the Cold War with Russia, I think we were just trying to like
Beat them
to
to
the moon.
Yeah,
but now people just want to pay their rent and be able to.
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues, but even that aside, it's like people now, with everything we have at our fingertips, it's like you could meet 100 different people that all have 100 different interests and have knowledge about 100 different topics, when like back then it's kind of like, oh, they're sending someone to the moon, like everyone's going to be interested in this huge global event.
Yeah, that's huge, like super huge.
But which makes it very interesting though, when then they are going to the moon and they don't even make it onto cable TV.
What a painful scene when they're doing that whole broadcast, that funny little show, and it's like no one's even watching except for like the close family. It's like that's a perfect painful scene. Like, painful in like such a different way. It's like, oh, they say going to the moon's like going to Pittsburgh. I'm like, it's still 1970 something. Like, was it really like that back then? It's like, oh, old news.
I believe it, but
and then like the disasters make news, and that's all people care about.
Yeah, as soon as it went wrong, then all the reporters showed up on her lawn, and she tells them all to F off, basically.
Don't put one piece of equipment on my lawn. They can take it up with my husband. He'll be home on Friday.
It's like,
let's
go. The stuff in the control room or like in Houston was not boring at all. That was just as interesting.
It was great. I might even like that stuff more. Like the trio on the ship, all those actors do a great job and are all excellent. But like I was kind of itching to a lot of times get back to NASA, because they're the ones who are really like controlling everything. Like it's really in their hands to get them back. Like Tom Hanks and all them have to do stuff obviously, but they're kind of at the mercy of NASA, and Kevin Bacon even starts to doubt it when they're on the ship, and he's like, they don't have a plan for us to get back. Like he doesn't even think that they are bringing them back, basically. He thinks they've already given up, at one point. And it's true, had NASA not like told them what to do, there's nothing they could do. So it's really in the hands of Ed Harris and the people at NASA, which is why I made that so interesting.
And when Ed Harris is giving that speech, it's like, all right, I want to get every person who's ever worked in this building, who's ever worked on this controller. I want to get the guy on the assembly line who built every nut and bolt. I want them all in here right now.
Definitely one of the strengths of the film is for such a long movie, and on top of that, a slow pace. It's not a long movie that's jam-packed with action or something. To be able to keep up that tension from the moment that, you know, the issue happens with the ship and they realize that they're, you know, in a bad situation, which is, you know, probably roughly about an hour into the movie. From that to the end of the movie, the tension never letting up. You know, even when they got back onto Earth and crashed into the water.
Hello, Houston. This is Odyssey. It's good to see you again.
The classic scene of everyone in the space thing.
Oh yeah, classic. Yeah.
If they could get a washing machine to fly, my Jimmy could land it.
This movie was hugely successful, made hundreds of millions of dollars, nominated for Best Picture, won a few Academy Awards as well. So I wonder if, like, you know, space movies come out today, you know, First Man, Interstellar, but none of them seem to have, like, that mainstream appeal anymore. Ad Astra, I guess, would be another one. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if they could make another space movie. Maybe it would have to be based on true events in order to have that mainstream appeal, because, you know.
I don't know. I think the next step is, like, I think Interstellar is, like, going to be, like, the last, like, that's, like, it's Nolan, but it's, like, that's, like, the next step where you got to take it, like, super far. Like, 2001 The Space Odyssey was, like, a huge step in filmmaking, and it was, like, they've gone, like, not as far, but it's almost like it is today, almost, and it was, like, revolutionary for the time. And, like, Interstellar is revolutionary, like, for our time. I just wonder, like, what's the next step to make space interesting? Because, like, we're in space now. Like, space travel doesn't feel that, like, crazy right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, what's, like, the next thing that's going to make it, like, a spectacle?
You know, then I think, oh, well, maybe it has to be, like, a true story. But then, like, you know, First Man, I think is really good. But I think this movie is better. Like, Apollo 13, I think, is better, and I don't even think First Man's as good as, like, Interstellar. But First Man also isn't really about the space. Like, it's just about Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, it was, like, very realistic in point of view, where, like, everything was, like, from Ryan Gosling's point of view in that one, right?
And then there's Ad Astra, which I also liked a lot more than I thought I would.
Is that the Brad Pitt one?
With Brad Pitt, yeah.
That one was a trip.
And that one was, again, visually very stunning. Visually, that movie was great too, but, I mean, like, barely anybody saw that. So I don't know if it's just, like, a dying genre, or, you know, if Apollo 13 is going to be the last, like, culturally relevant, I guess.
It's an answer that I can't think of right now, but I think it's going to have to be something in the spectrum of 2001 Interstellar, but in its own way that hasn't been done before. But am I the guy to have that answer? Probably not.
But I love space movies, and I would love to see more of them get made, because when they're done well, I think, you know, it's one of my favorite types of movie.
Yeah, if each filmmaker can put its own twist on it, where it's like like they're all the same thing going to space, but each one is so different. I just can't believe, like, just never saw it. You know what I mean? Like, one of those. How many movies are we sitting on? That luckily we have a YouTube channel, so we can, you know,
do this.
Have a reason to do it. You know, how many movies have been sitting on the shelves for years that, like, have just walked by or scrolled by and streaming, and just, like, we'll never watch unless someone tells us to. You know, very few times have I been lucky where I'm like, I pick something random or looks interesting and it's a classic. So luckily, people told us to watch this one.
And not only, like I said, are we watching movies that we've never seen, but also some of our favorite movies. Do you want to tell them what we're watching next?
The next film we're going to be watching is the 1980 film by Stanley Kubrick called The Shining. Possibly my favorite movie of all time. I can watch this movie any day of the week, and I get to watch it with my best buddy here for all of you. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, I only have seen this movie once, and I watched it in 2019 because I was going to go see Dr. Sleep. So I figured it was a good time to watch The Shining before that. And Dr. Sleep is going to be the next thing we watch for our Mike Flanagan series. So figured it kind of lines up for multiple reasons. We never watched The Shining together before, so it'll be only my second time watching it, and it'll be a good time. So if you guys aren't on Patreon and you don't have access to the full cut reaction, make sure you watch The Shining if by chance somehow you haven't, or just want to refresh on it before our next video. And if you want to watch it along with us, you can check that out on our Patreon. But yeah, we're just going to kind of figure this series out for a while. We're going to be doing The Next Generation for quite a long time on the channel. So in the meantime, while we're reacting to that, we're going to be doing a lot of these movies discussions as well. So hope you like it.
Houston, we're done.